So my name is Rodney Wolfenbarger. I represent the Foundation for Tacoma Students, and I'm also director of Pierce County Pathways. I'll tell you what Pathways is as we go forward in the presentation. And my presentation is about building a community for college access. Our Pathways program includes access, completion, and then transition into workforce. But today I'm just going to be focusing on the college access piece and how it builds upon some things that Ellen had mentioned earlier, our decade of work in improving graduation rates in the Tacoma area. So a little about us. We are the Cradle to Career Intermediary. We also serve as the backbone organization for what we call Graduate Tacoma. Graduate Tacoma, I'll show you a timeline in a moment. It began in 2010. Today it has more than 350 partners, aligning goals, data, and resources in support of our mission, which is to help every child succeed, cradle to college and career. And you'll see at the bottom, I think, as we heard in the last presentation, I don't know, whatever you were calling your community groups, we saw your map. You were the backbone and you had different groups. We call those collective action networks, and those are at the bottom. We have different groups where partners can engage around STEAM learning, out of school and summer learning opportunities, our college support network, which is looking at access, persistence, and completion, and then advocacy. I'll mention that, return to that again in just a moment. So brief history, I mentioned 2010, Graduate Tacoma was created, but the momentum, the event that set that into motion was a story published in USA Today. And the headline read that Tacoma, Washington was a dropout factory where only 55% of students were graduating from high school. That sent the community certainly into an uproar. That's not the national reputation people wanted. But it was a call to action, bringing people together to say, what are we going to do about this? And surely we can do better. 2010 was also when the foundation was created as a 501c3. Initially, it was an advocacy organization just to create awareness about this cause and the disparities that existed along particularly lines of race. When we talk about 55%, that was the majority, but also the best. Those rates were not that when we looked at priority populations. Eventually, we began created staffing and became not only the backbone, but we provide staffing and support for the movement. And what that looks like is informed by our participation in Strive Together. How many of you in here are a Strive Together community, or you know about that? So if you don't know about that, it's a national network focused on centering equity and using data and collective action to drive systems change, right? And the next slide actually goes into a little more detail. But when we joined that network, it was great because we were talking with other national partners about how they were doing this work in other regions of the U.S. So a lot of training around data collection and analysis and how to get people on the same page working together. 2018, that set the tipping point, sort of. We set a goal in that first decade of our work as a community to increase graduation rates by 50%. So we wanted to move from 55 to 80%. And in 2018, graduation rates were 86%. And we had either closed or narrowed gaps among priority populations. In fact, that year was the first year for the graduation rates for Black students actually surpassed that of their white peers. They were at 93%. Today, graduation rates, I think last year were 90%. They took a dip during the pandemic, but routinely above 90% in our community. And it has us looking toward what's next. And we started that process in 2018. So I mentioned Strive Together, and it is. It's focused on cradle to career. We're looking at kindergarten readiness all the way through high school graduation, post-secondary enrollment and completion, and the transition into good earning wage careers. That's really the work of Pierce County Pathways. But if you don't know about this network, again, it starts with a shared community vision. Ours was graduation. now that that work is, I don't want to say it's complete, you always have to maintain, and there's still some room to go. But we're looking at the next decade of the movement. And the next decade is beyond high school graduation, from enrollment to employment. I mentioned, and we've seen it referred to, we've heard it referred to throughout our morning together, the importance of data. Data is the through line. How do we know that we're making progress, and how do we know what to focus on for change? These are some of the questions. I mentioned we are if we have three primary roles, I would say it's being a convener, a connector, and a data collector, right? And we create and maintain all of our community dashboards. That also includes facilitating DSAs with our K-12 partners as well as our post-secondary partners, and even getting data from employment from our workforce development board to say how are our residents faring in the economy, the local economy. But what data does, it points to what's working and what isn't. So when we look at what's working, those are our community bright spots. We want to amplify and expand those, adopt those practices in more places. What isn't working, those are our obstacles to opportunities, things that we can collaborate on and change. Who is it not working for? That points to the disparities and the equity gaps that we certainly want to close. And how do we solve for that? And those are the practice and policy shifts that we create together. So this is from a public report that we produced in 2020 called Making the Case. We call it the Great Resetting. And this is the next decade of our work. It describes the decade of collective impact, the results from that effort, how many people contributed to the cause. But it also looks toward the future and says, as we move forward, what's needed for success in our local community and our region and our state? And we know high school graduation is not enough. That's true across the nation. But research has been done in our state says 70% of the new jobs to be created in the next 5 years are going to require some credential or at least training beyond high school. And so our work is facilitating those supports to help students prepare for and make those transitions. Our 2030 goal statement in 2020, it was, let's increase high school graduation by 50%. For 2030, we're aiming for 70% across post-secondary pathways. That's access and enrollment, it's completion of apprenticeship programs and opportunities, but also 70% of our students transitioning into careers that provide a good earning wage within 6 years of high school graduation. And all of that, of course, is centered in closing racial and economic gaps for all groups across credential and career attainment. We've got quite a ways to go. My notes up here, I don't know what your community is like, but in Washington State, these rates have been stagnant for decades. They've actually declined in the last decade, but locally, about 45% of our students enroll in post-secondary, so more than not choose not to pursue that path. And then of those who enroll, we know across the nation, about 40% don't complete. Our rate's 56%. I mentioned we track a lot of indicators, and we have for a decade. The ones on the left, kindergarten readiness all the way through graduation, we've tracked before. But when we reset with our community, we said, what else is important to you for the next decade of the work? And it's mostly things on the right. People are interested in social and emotional well-being, positive adult interactions, being more intentional about tracking apprenticeship program participation and completion. What are the economic outcomes beyond a degree or credential? Finding that data is proving to be very difficult, and tracking students between these systems and after they exit systems is incredibly difficult as well. So we're still designing ways of collecting that data and designing the dashboards. And then the institutional indicators. Again, our work centered in equity. Looking at the representation of priority populations within institutions. And then looking at the equity and representation in staffing. And that goes to our accountability pledges. All of our partners sign an accountability pledge when they become part of the movement that says we will center equity in our work, and we will look at disparities that the data shows us and work together to close those gaps. So this leads to my work, which was, I'm fairly new to the foundation. I'm 1 year into my role. Pathways was created the moment I came aboard. I was the first employee, and then I inherited some other employees who were already, as part of my team, who were already working within the foundation. And from there, over the last 11 months, we've doubled in size and still expanding. But the goal of this is to build a coordinated system of supports, enabling post-secondary success and economic mobility for all students. So if 2020 goal was focused on graduation, this is organizing around the mission of economic mobility for all. Again, access, completion, workforce are all parts of our work. And I want to talk about two programs we have in the access space. One is Campaign Free Aid. Ellen Farah, you had mentioned that you're doing some of that financial access work. The goal of this campaign is to bring people together to increase financial aid completion rates in our county by 5%. So we started that back in the fall. We're coming upon 1 year of the program, and it's built around a community learning cohort where we bring people together across districts. I'll give you an idea of the expanse of Pierce County. There are 145,000 K through 12 students spread across 19 districts and 1,800 square miles in our community. Depending on where you live, you have a very different experience. We have Tacoma is a very urban and densely populated community, but we also have rural regions just outside the city. Tacoma is also the county seat. And when I talk to our rural districts, I say Tacoma is 10 miles away. That's where a lot of the economic opportunity is. It's a lot of where educational institutions and support are as well. County services are coordinated out of Tacoma. But you talk to a rural family who's separated by a waterway, and they said it might be 10 miles, but for some of our families it might as well be 100. Getting across that bridge is difficult. What's next is focused on building bridges. As we've heard that metaphor mentioned time and time again, this is a senior exit survey, but it's offered all year round. And I'll provide a little more detail about what that entails, but literally our role in that is to recruit, train, and resource a community-based cohort of community navigators who work with our college and career advisors and counselors to connect students to support. So students take a survey. Within 48 hours, we match them with a community-based mentor based on their specific needs that they've identified. Again, so Campaign Free Aid, what that looks like is we bring that cohort together. We have over the last year, like every quarter. So before FAFSA season, we bring them together to prepare and provide training, to talk about coordinating supports and activities. Another thing we've done in that campaign is we've created a website. This is just one part of the website, but it's a centralized calendar of events. And this represents a different way of working. So we ask each school, what are you doing within financial aid completion? Can we publicize those events? And do you welcome people from other districts who are not your students? And many of them said yes. So these are the events that open to the public, but it's the common source of truth, right? If people were saying, where can I get support on any day that support's offered within the community? And the school districts who are participating agree to open their doors to others, even beyond their own students and families. This is one of the dashboards, or at least an example of it. I provide weekly reporting to superintendents, our partners, to say, here's how we're doing with the metrics. These are the trends that we're seeing in the data, and these are the gaps to the goal. I just want you to see, we track things across we track outcomes across the district, progress. We also do it at the building level. On the right, you can filter by district. You can look at dates from our Student Achievement Council to see how those trends have changed over time. You can also shade those bars on the right that are green by low-income students or by race and ethnicity. And you'll see different increases or decreases based on those priority populations. And then at the bottom, you can sort it by the difference from last year, year-over-year increases, or week-over-week increases. So the good thing is campaign free aid seems to be working. We've got growth anywhere from 3 to 12% within the buildings. The district as a whole has grown, at least Tacoma, by about 2.5%. And where we see kind of the difference, some buildings are doing exceptionally well. But the district as a whole is still grappling with two populations that aren't faring so well. Actually, their application rates are less than 5, like total. Not 5%, we're talking about 5 students, and that's our alternative school settings. Those have been at 0 for several years. We've done intentional outreach this year, not assuming that we understand those students' ambitions, so providing continuous support. And then our online high schools. We don't see a lot of participation there, and when we're interviewing students as part of community listening projects that we're doing on behalf of the city of Tacoma, many of our high school students really tell us that once they entered that space or they remained in that space after the pandemic, not only is a lot of their learning self-directed, but they also don't receive a lot of other information and support. And it's heartbreaking to be talking to students who are nearing the end of their high school careers and they say, no one's giving me any information about financial aid, and I aspire to go to college, but I think it's too late. And those are the things that we're trying to solve for the community. So what's next? I mentioned this program. This is the one that provides the survey, but it can help with several things: college application and communication, financial aid, paying for college, looking for other scholarships. They can help you with resume writing and job search, job training programs and pre-apprenticeships, and mentoring and more. So every student in Washington has to create a high school and beyond plan. That would be the first step. Like in the fall, before maybe students aren't yet thinking about what's next beyond high school, if they haven't created that plan, our navigators can help with that. So this is what our navigators look like right now. We've traditionally focused on serving Tacoma in the first decade. Now we're expanding to serve more of the county. Over the last year, we expanded to the 2nd district. The coming year, we will expand to a 3rd and 4th district. Campaign Free Aid already has 4 districts participating and about 40 building level staff among those districts. But our community response team is designed to reflect the racial, ethnic, and social identities of our students. That's something that we've heard in community is a lot of times students say, I don't know who I can turn to for support, or the people who are giving me support, perhaps I don't trust them as trusted messengers, right? They don't understand me or my experience, or they don't speak my primary or preferred language. So when we recruit, we try to be intentional that we reflect all of the different identities within our community and school system, and then we can match people based on some of the information that students provide. But that's our community response team. And this is what representation looks like. We talk about representation in our institutions, but 52% of our K-12 students identify as people of color. 15% of our teachers identify as people of color. So the CRT is sort of a stopgap. It's backfilling. If we talked about a pathway, it would be backfilling what's missing. But we also know that intentional work needs to be done to prepare students for careers so that those metrics also change for the future. And last, this is what What's Next looks like so far this year. We started back in September. This is just Tacoma School District. There are other school districts that we're tracking this data for. The 719 students, seniors, have completed the survey. And we asked them 2 questions. Where are you trying to go? We asked them more than that, but the basic questions are, where are you trying to go? And what support would help you get there? So this slide here shows the confidence of students. How confident are you that you're going to graduate on time? And you see the majority, 582, say I'm very confident. 112 say I'm somewhat confident. 15 are unsure. And we want to make sure that we facilitate referrals for those 15. 15's not confident, 10 not sure. But for those 25 students, the first order of business is making sure that we loop back with their counselors and say, can you check this student? They're concerned about graduating on time. Can you audit their credits? Give them some advice as needed. What do they need help with? Many of them, it's just navigating the systems of how do you get financial support. Beyond that, the middle part is about filling out applications, college applications, employment applications, or planning for a direct transition to work. And then toward the bottom, there's 57 students that says, I'm not sure, but I'm willing to talk it out, right? And we also ask students, who do you want to talk to? Do you want us to refer you to someone within your school? Maybe a program you're already part of? We ask about those questions. Or would you like to talk to someone new? And if it's someone new, that's where we make a referral to our CRT. And then the number of students requesting help, 326. Notice their pathways are identified here. The majority of them, 413 of those 716 students says, I'm on the pathway to college, I'm pretty confident about that. 105 though say, I want to go to college, but I'm not sure it's a reality, right? So this is where we talk about summer melt, that if plans and preparations haven't been made, that group, that line there, are likely to end up in that demographic. So we want to provide affirmation and navigation before they get to that stage. And then you have people who are going into job training programs in the military, and we ask them about their FAFSA status. And, you know, it's great to see that more than half of the students have completed the FAFSA. That's what we expect. But the ones that say, I'm not sure, I don't even know what that is, we want to provide some education, outreach, and invitation to a CFA event where they and their families can learn more about the supports that are available to them. So those are our two college access programs. Happy to answer questions. This is our contact information for, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. It all uses the same handle. My email and our website. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.